So if you notice, there's a piece of boning right here and it goes all the way down to here, and then there's a piece of boning over here and it goes down to here as well on this side. And I really want to keep the boning because it gives the bride a lot more shape, and it makes it so that the dress is not as flimsy. So what I'm going to do, since I have the pattern pinned to this part of the dress, and I don't want to cut it at a different point because I want to keep the top of the lace where it's furthest from each other, so that I have the most control over the width of the dress. Because I don't want to have to change that and redo it myself, and because the boning is on the bottom in the lining, I'm going to cut the top piece of fabric, but then when I get to this point, I'm going to cut all the way down and keep the boning, so that eventually, should I decide to keep the boning because I'm kind of on the fence about it, I can always move it up. So last night I realized that once I cut up the dress at the top, I didn't have enough fabric to use the pattern that I just created. It took me like an hour to make it, so I was really disappointed. So I started to think, what other parts of the dress could I use to cut out this pattern, because I really want to use this design. And so I thought maybe I could use the lining because that doesn't show and I don't really need it. But then I realized that the lining is a different fabric from the outer layer of the dress, and because I'm using the outer layer of the back of the dress that'll be directly connected to the front of the dress, I didn't want any contrasting shades or fabric textures. And so I thought, okay, I really need to find a part of the dress that's exactly the same as the front. I was looking at my desk and I saw the satin sash that's like 10 feet long, and so what I did, it looks like this, and it's double-sided, so I seam ripped it and I unfolded it and ironed it, and I get like 10 feet of this, and it's the exact same fabric as the rest of the outer layer of the dress. And so I'm gonna seam rip all of it, and if I sew it together I can get a big enough piece to where I can honestly do anything I want with it. So what I'm doing right now is sewing in the breast pad. It's this triangular piece, and I'm just going over it a couple times back and forth, about 1/2 inch to secure it. And I'm going to check in a minute to see whether it shows through all of the layers. So what I've done is sewn the front to the back finally with the seam here. This seam was recycled from the previous dress, and then I've tightened it here, so that's how it's staying fastened all the way around. And what I'm going to do is pleat this up around the bust once I have it on my model, so it's perfect. You can't quite tell here, but it's lower on this side than it is on this side, and where the pins are, you'll be able to see more once I've turned up the seam that it is in fact asymmetrical. So for now, because the fabric on the mannequin was getting a little bit worn, I just pinned it to my measuring tape and wrapped it around the neck to make it stay. So for now, this is done. I need to have my model try it on so I can do some further adjustments and get it all figured out. Right now, I am sewing the cord, which I'm going to braid and then sew beads on. And what I'm going to do for that is take out these earrings that my mom made for her wedding day, and I'm going to sew all of the beads on across the braid. But what I'm finding is that as I'm pinning it and then sewing, there's these little prongs that move the fabric along as I sew, and it's snagging the fabric because it's so delicate. What I'm going to try to do is pin tissue paper to that side where I'm sewing it, not so that it gets caught in the stitch, but so that's right before it. So hopefully it doesn't continue to snag. So I'm gonna try this and see if it works, and in the meantime, pinning 6 of these strips. I tried ironing them. It's gonna take forever. Well, I think it worked. That actually went a lot smoother than I thought it was going to. And now we can compare. I don't know how well you can see, but we have both lined up. A little bit twisty. I like it. I'm gonna continue to use that trick. That was a good idea. Okay, I braided one of them right here, and I did that by finding all of the ends that look the best and matching them to one side, so that one side is gonna look the best, and I pinned it to something so I could not have to hold it while I was working on it, and then I just started braiding. Yep, they're about the same. Right now, I've just sewn not the waistband, but I'm finishing the bottom of the crop top. And so I've sewn, you can see here, I've sewn it under, and then I ironed it. Now I'm sewing the underside of it, and I'm doing it by hand because I don't want the seam to show through the front. So I'm just grabbing one layer of fabric out of like the 3 or 4 that there are, and then I'm just looping it around to catch a few threads in this panel. Okay, so I'm finally starting to work on the skirt, and so it has lining, and then it has the front of the skirt that's sewn to the lace, and the lace is longer, making a train in the back of the skirt, but it's also longer than the front of the skirt. The white satin, it's about 5 inches too long, and I like that it's a little longer, but it's too long, and the skirt is too tall for my model. And so from her waist all the way to the floor is 41 inches, and I have to keep some in mind for sewing into the waistband, so I'm going to cut this to 42 inches, and right now it's about 43, not including some excess. Before I cut up the lace at all, I'm just going to cut 1 inch off of the waistband and the lining all around, and then when I have the lace separated, then I'll cut off the excess. And the reason, okay, where are my scissors? I just had them. Oh, my mom took them. Did you take my scissors? Alright, found the scissors. And found my dog. Sorry guys, I live here. it is cut, and I'm gonna do the lace now.